Okay, we'll start the January 10th, 2023 DRC, first one of the year. So we'll get going. First item that we'll look at is the Erkenbrack concept plan. I think we've got someone here if you want to step up to the table. And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Hi, Derek Terry, representing FIG on the Erkenbrack property.
Okay.
And Christian said he can't hear anything. He's on. I don't know if it's muted on our end.
Let's see. Am I muted?
Maybe.
Oh, I don't think I'm muted.
Okay. That's fine.
Try the mic back on. Christian, can you hear us yet?
Shows that he's muted.
Yeah, he's muted.
Christian, are you able to hear us?
He's talking. John, maybe go to your settings on your audio.
Yep.
And make sure that you're casting down on the bottom right of your computer. Make sure that you're casting and that your audio there. Click on your speakers.
Should be.
And then go to try your, oh, that's interesting.
Microphone array, that's all there. Let's try this. Sound. Trying to go to my settings. Oh, looks like he's logged off, and we'll see if he can come back on and see if that'll work. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can keep going.
try that there. That work, Christian? No. Not sure. So
He's texting me. He still has got nothing, but like
still don't have anything.
we can move forward.
Okay, so this is a proposed 165 unit townhome project located just down approximately about 600 West Main Street. This has been a project that we've been working with the developer on in regards to the development agreements and such. And so we're at the point where they've submitted a concept plan for the proposed project. So again, it's 165 units.
So John, it's not just 165 units. There's commercial that goes
Yes.
along with it. So you've got the residential side of things and the commercial side of things as well.
Yep. So there's commercial acreage and units along the back onto Main Street, and also the back up against the existing building there, owned by Erkenbracks there. So included in here also is a pad site for some other commercial site right adjacent to the Erkenbrack building, with associated open spaces and such with the project. So with that, again, this is a concept application, a concept plan. So the point of the DRC is to provide technical feedback on the proposed development as it goes through the process. So with that, we'll go around the DRC for any thoughts or comments or questions. Starting with Randy with building.
Just for my clarification, where are the town or the condos that are being built out? Is that
where the condo's being
Yeah,
located? Or,
the ones over here, the other project that's under construction. Is
oh, you're
that-
talking about the Johnson's Grove.
Yeah,
So the Johnson's Grove project is right
that
here.
right there, okay.
Yep. And so they're, again, located directly west of that, so,
Yeah, at this point, I have nothing as far as building, so.
okay. Chief first?
I don't really have too much other than, are those private roads or public streets?
All the roads within the development are public streets. So they are, this application was vested prior to the modification of the street cross section, expanding it to the 62-foot wide right of way. However, part of the discussion, one thing we wanted to discuss is trying to see if we can get a wider asphalt road there than just 29 feet.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
And just as clarification, yeah, you'll see the roads in there are all public, but there's private accesses to the garages. Those work and are okay because nearly all the units have frontage on a public street. So you'll see those kind of internal access. Those are private. But anything that's got the dashed line through the middle of it is a public road.
Okay, that's the only question I have.
Okay. Jason Guy with Public Works.
Question I had is on the new 500 West where it ties into 200 North. I think we probably need to square that up so you're coming onto that straight instead of on an angle. I know it's really early, but see what I mean?
And so angling this road out slightly.
Yeah, the
in that
radius.
regards.
Yeah, yep. I don't know. Just so you're at a stop sign there and you got a road, you're looking clear back to the east there. It's hard to see if you're coming onto it on a sharp angle.
Mm-hmm.
So
So there's a new home there on that lot, so we'd have to look at site triangles and distances and also the property owner and see if we can make that work. Something we'll just have to discuss. It's a good point that we ought to try and bring that on there at a more sharp angle or a more square
Perpendicular
angle.
to the intersection.
But again, it's gonna depend on what available land might be available to help us do that, so. It may not happen, it just depends on what we can work out with the property, what you can work out with the property owner that's there, so.
okay.
I mean, and that might be something we look at closer in the future, but obviously the road that's hitting Lark Lane to the north is coming on an angle as well, so maybe that's a justified four-way stop just because of the tricky sight lines. But that's a great point that we didn't even think about is bringing that road in perpendicular so that it's a safer intersection.
Closer to it, so.
Well, you're gonna have challenges either way, right, because the southbound coming from the north you're not gonna have that squared up, and so.
Right.
And it's almost like it's a little bit offset as well, so.
Yeah.
Radii and all those other things that we're talking about for turning and all that kind of stuff is gonna be challenging, but it is good to look at it as we're talking about now to try and figure out what we can make work there. If somebody is turning right, you're right, it would be better to have a radius there that would allow them to at least try and square up so they can see the westbound traffic coming from the east.
I don't know how much room we have there, but I don't know if we got a roundabout or something with all those weird angles might be.
That's going to be a tricky intersection,
No matter
regardless.
what you do with it, it's gonna be a tricky intersection. It already is right now, even just three ways.
It's already challenging the way it is. So
Right.
But there may be some things that we can do to help make it safer. It's good. That's a good point, Jason.
We haven't looked at like sewer. You're not sewering down the private right-of-ways or anything.
At this point, everything appears that it should, again, they haven't done a design on the sewer in any of those regards, but it appears that the sewer would be able to remain within public roads.
Okay, that's all.
So two things on the public works side of things. I would just mention to the developer, the owner, that when we do this type of development, we typically have you service a building with 1 meter. So 5 or 6 units would be serviced by 1 2-inch meter rather than having a whole bunch of. And then your HOA is the company that gets billed and takes care of all those payments and all that kind of stuff. Just having that many meters in there is just it becomes a nightmare. So
Yeah, we prefer
water
less meters.
would be off of 1 meter at least per minimum per building, and then also PI for your irrigation purposes. you might think about putting some sleeves under the roads. We
Yeah.
do require intersection sleeves in our standards,
Okay.
so that you don't have a meter on every block, but
Yeah.
it may turn out that you need one every block.
Yeah,
so.
we'll do as few as we
The other
can.
thing that you were asking about with the sewer, most of this stuff to the west is downhill.
Mhm.
And so your sewer is likely gonna come from off-site. You're gonna have to put in some sewer to get to the west, some off-site sewer.
Yeah.
Again, just to make sure that you're aware of that right now.
Yeah, we've had
That's up to you
conversations
guys
with.
to try and work with the private property owners and get it down to the west where it can hook in.
Yeah, we've talked with UDOT in terms of they have right away there that we can go in and get it down to the tracks and connect that way.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing to note, just on the kind of Norm mentioned, it's on the irrigation meters.
Mhm.
I would anticipate that we would have for each of these interior blocks, there'd be a separate irrigation meter for those. We won't,
Yeah, we
for
don't want
private
laterals going underneath the
laterals.
roads, but again, making sure that we have,
Yes.
you could put laterals underneath your driveways and stuff, but not under public roads. That's
Yeah.
the important to all things.
Okay, Jason, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, Taylor?
The only thing I really have is they're on I guess that's the west end by
This
the
is the
tot
west end,
lot.
yep.
Those 5 homes right there, that the only frontage access in
Nope.
a little bit in the
These
center
ones
island
or
thing.
this-
Just to
right
the,
here.
Right
yep,
there,
those
yeah.
ones.
Those ones that only have frontage off of that private drive. Seems like we've dealt with this in other communities, and I don't know what the overall determination was, but I know for fire and EMS purposes, that style doesn't work well and makes it really restrictive for us getting in and out of those homes, as well as finding the addresses, because the addresses tend to get kind of lost in.
I think planning and zoning is gonna have some comments on that as well, on that set of buildings, but
Okay.
we'll look at that as well. It's
And we can talk about that right now. What a suggestion that we have there is to keep with the consistency of having everything on a public street. Maybe you could take the 2 outside units on each end and turn them so the fronts are facing the public road. I don't know what the total unit counts where another unit could be put. There might just need to be a unit that's lost there. In the exhibit of the development agreement, you only had 4 units that were in that specific location. So, having those units turn and face the public street, and then having like a little hammerhead for access to those garages, that might be something that needs to happen to stick with the requirement that we have that everything be on a public street. So I think that probably satisfy the concern that you had there, but we
You might be able to turn 3 and face them to the north
Right.
and 2 to the south or
Right.
something like that with a small driveway in between them so that they're rear loaded, right?
Okay. Yeah, we can look at that.
it just depends on how it what space you have, and if that eats up any of the open space, because I know you're probably close to the open space that was agreed upon that you would provide in this development. So that's I think most everything else in terms of layout probably works for the most part, but that was the one area that we identified as well that probably needs to be maybe adjusted a little bit.
Okay.
John, you've got 2 people in the waiting room.
Yeah, one there for Sean Young's for a separate project.
So Jacob's with us.
Jacob's with you guys.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you would, please.
Yep. Okay. Anything else, Taylor?
Not right now, no.
Okay, sounds good. Jason?
Yeah, I'll just bring up a couple things, and a lot of things are going to be on red lines that we'll go through together, but more just higher level. Process-wise, this is on the Planning Commission agenda tonight. Planning Commission meeting tonight is at 7 o'clock. Again, it's still a concept plan, so there's not going to be any action, but it'll just be further review and providing feedback and suggestions so that you have good information to prepare a preliminary plan. There is a public hearing that is also a part of that meeting, so the public will be invited to come and see what's being proposed and then give comments on anything else that they see that needs to be in compliance with our code. More higher level things. Eventually, all these multifamily units, they'll need to receive architectural review. And so we don't really designate exactly when that needs to happen, but sooner the better. So if you have architectural renderings of what those units will look like, the sooner you can get it to us.
So we submitted those with this plan.
Okay, so we do have that. We'll check and see if we got something submitted. If we don't see anything, we'll communicate with you so we make sure we have that, so we can kind of help you, facilitate you moving through the process. But those meetings are on an as-needed basis. We don't have like a regular meeting schedule for ARC, so we'll do kind of a preliminary review to make sure a lot of the objective criteria is met. Percentage of materials and things like that, and then we'll set up a meeting. But that's just a kind of a side comment to help you understand what would be done there. The other buildings, I guess technically wouldn't, because they're in the CLM zone. So yeah, I don't think the CLM zone we have any architectural review. Other comments. So on your plans, and this was kind of happened as we negotiated the development agreement. On your plans, you indicate all of those buildings as being flex space.
Mm-hmm.
Again, flex space doesn't mean anything to us. We don't have a definition for what flex space is. I know you have an idea of its flexibility of what exactly that could be, but now that we have a submission, or now that we're working closer to preliminary, we're going to need to know what's intended to be there. And the reason why is because you could, per the development agreement, have retail sales and services. You could have a wholesale warehouse facility, and the parking requirement for those two different uses are very much different. And so, if you had, let's just say you could not have all of those retail sales and services because there's not enough parking. So you're going to have a mixture, but we're going to need to kind of figure out what that is. Now, maybe it's not you identify what each one's going to be, but maybe you need to figure out what percentage can be retail sales and services and what percentage needs to be warehouse wholesale facility. And I believe that the parking requirement for warehouse wholesale was 1 space per 1,000 square feet. The parking requirement for retail sales and services is 5. So you can kind of see that there's some planning that needs to be done there, so that you don't come in with a bunch of commercial retail sales and services, and then you have all this space that technically can't even be occupied because there's no more parking left for it. So this is a time where we really need to look closer at that and figure out what uses are going to be in those buildings. Another thing to point out that we'll need to add as a red line is I remember, Derek, we kind of talked about some of the amenity requirements there are. Obviously, we have a requirement that there needs to be a tot lot per, I think, every 8 units or something like that.
Well, it's 1 for the first 8, and then another additional for additional tot lot for every 20 after that.
Right. So that's a lot of tot lots.
Yeah.
And I think we recognize that, maybe having some, 3 or 4 strategically placed tot lots will serve that community just fine.
With additional amenities, not just.
Right. And that
You'd have to combine them, basically, is what he's talking about.
and that the additional amenities, instead of tot lots, maybe they can be something else that can better serve that development. Maybe they're barbecue pits or pickleball court or whatever they want need to be. But that's something I think we can look a little bit closer at with you as it pertains to our code. I know we did something else with our code related to tot lots that are, for instance, right across the street from a public park.
Mm-hmm.
If there's, within so many feet of a public park, they have the option to not, have a tot lot, but replace that tot lot with a different type of amenity. We just, that's something we can look at a little bit closer together and see how that works with that requirement. I know there's probably more than I'm going to say, but I think those were some of the high level things I wanted to touch on. But there'll be red lines that I'll chime in on more as we get to it.
So to go along with the building, like Jason's talking about for the commercial, industrial, warehouse, those types of things, like Jason was saying, you might just do as a percentage and say there's going to be 13 of these and 12 of these or whatever it happens to be. But as we go through the process, not only through this process, but also through building permit and business license applications, all of that will be looked at as we continue to go through there, so we don't get in a quagmire of we're not building what's per the development code, but per the development agreement. So
Okay.
just recognize that that will go all the way through as we go through, clear through to building and occupancy.
Okay.
Okay?
You notice a continuing theme that the development agreement will be, is the guiding document that we look at on for this. So, to kind of build on that, just a couple of notes. Here, you show the overall gross acreage is 24.5 acres approximately. So that appears that it would be including the Erkenbrack property here in the Erkenbrack building. Is
Okay.
that,
Well,
is everything else is about 19.5 acres or so
Okay.
that's, say, recorded with the county. And so just clarification on those.
Well, and I'd say, yeah, more than clarification. Obviously, Mr. Erkenbrack is here, needs to be involved with some of that right-of-way improvements to make those roads go through here. But to be clear, that existing building owned by Mr. Erkenbrack is not a part of this
Right.
proposal. That is a separate parcel that there's nothing proposed to be done, anything different with that right now. So I think including that in there is just confusing, and I think
that's not our intent. We'll take that out.
yeah, and it's, the second line down, it gives specific acreage for the Erkenbrack building. I think that needs to be removed because that's not a part of this application proposal.
Yeah.
Now, to go along with that, though, the access roads do include some of the property that's there.
Right.
So again, it's kind of a little, it's probably a little bit more than 19 plus acres that you currently own, but it's certainly not 24. So
Right. Yeah, you're right.
just to clarify that and make sure that we understand what's part of this plan and what's not, so that everything's clear on that.
Okay. And just for clarification, the right of way, like to go to the north, and we're in the process of getting that transferred over to be included in this, so it's all just one
Yep.
piece.
Great.
And
Yep,
Erkenbrack
that'll
is
be
that'll be
clear.
great. And we'll want to review that as you go
Yeah.
through that process to make sure that we're getting the right widths and all the stuff that we need there. So that's great. That's good.
So just kind of on the parking for their overall development, based on the parking the garages are considered to be one parking stall, because they're less than 24 by 24. Then they've provided an additional 215, Lauren, exterior parking stalls. So combined total, we're about 380 total. Driveway parking is not allowed for this
It's not
development.
Counted. Yeah.
So it appears, to say, based on the concept, it appears that parking, you're counting these parking stalls as parking. That would be considered tandem parking, and so that doesn't qualify.
To be clear, you can park there, you just can't count it as part of your parking requirements.
Right.
Like we put 2 smart cars in those garages, but we can
And John, if I may,
probably 4 smart cars in the garages, but not 2 F-350s.
Right.
Those will not.
yeah, and maybe some feedback. This is being a concept plan. There's only 11 units out of those, 100 plus units that even have a driveway. Sometimes those driveways cause more problems than they do, an extra place for someone to temporarily park or whatever.
Yeah.
They're not even counted towards parking, but the thought that we had was maybe taking those units and bumping them into the interior of that little miniature block and not even having those driveways, because that way you're consistent around the entire development. But also we've had some places where those driveways kind of pop up and they turn into permanent parking stalls, and then they use their garage for a storage unit, and it's hard for you to plow through there because you have cars that are parked out there and they're sticking out into your little access, and they cause issues with neighbors not being able to get good access to their garage. So that's maybe just a suggestion. I know you put it in there because you had enough space, and it was like, oh, well, that's great, but there's nowhere else where you have a driveway outside of the garage. And so I don't know if the DRC feels any differently on that. That was one that, as we talked with planning and zoning and engineering, we thought may as well make it consistent with everything else, and sometimes those driveways are more of a curse than they are a blessing.
Okay.
We'll clean these notes up, but I'm just putting that kind of a placeholder. So, I do have a question for for you, Taylor, on these. These access roads, the private driveways, are 24 feet wide. I believe that's because they do front on a public street. There's access to there. That 24-foot wide does say, my understanding, does meet fire code. Is that
Yeah, they'll be
accurate?
fine where they're frontage to the wider
Okay,
streets.
because they have the frontage, the wider frontage, or public right of way in the front of there.
Yep.
For emergency access. Okay. Let's see here. Kind of come back down here. Open space. Based on it, the development agreement calls for 3.95 acres, and they're providing 4.22 acres for open space. There's also the square footage needed based on the number of units of open space that the residents are entitled to per our code. So that's kind of what that,
And per the development
for the
agreement.
development agreement.
Yeah, so the development agreement, and I've sent these emails. So the problem was on that, there was a typo on the amount of open space that was actually shown on the development agreement on the site plan. And so there was actually, if you go back to the development agreement, it's actually shown there, it's 3.42 acres on the actual master plan site plan, but they put, they through the adjustments, they didn't make the correction on the actual number that was said there. I think it said it was 3.95. What was actually shown is only 3.42. And then this, I think are we at 3.57 now, or what are we?
So based on what we measured, that's granted off the scale that's with the plans, we measured 4.22 acres is what was included of open space.
So to be clear, open space is everything that's not a building, a parking lot, or a sidewalk.
Correct.
So it's hardscape, or not hardscape, sorry, it's softscape or grass or tot lots or open areas in the back where there's common area, those types of things. That's where the green space is measured from.
Okay.
So
And that's something that you can ask for and talk about, but I think the city council went approved that development agreement based off of the numbers, the calculations.
well, I don't think a change is needed. If they're showing they've got 4.2 and even if the 3.95 on the original was
it's
mislabeled,
higher.
Okay.
it's higher.
I
Okay.
think that we're
Should be
just
there.
showing that there's a discrepancy there. And,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Okay,
meeting it.
gotcha.
So-
In
If
terms
you
of
got
what
more
you're
open
talking about.
space than what was
Right.
labeled,
Okay.
I wouldn't even bring that up again
Okay.
because that's just going to confuse people like
Okay.
it did me.
Okay, gotcha.
So another item is the project is fronting onto Main Street. And so as such, all the roadway improvements, the widening of that, and also the tapering in as we head towards the viaduct will need to be included in the design as we start to roll forward.
Okay.
So that'll include the whole frontage of the project. One other item that
Hey, John, just a note on that. It looks like that's probably around 400 feet until you get down to that second access that kind of drops down in. There's enough, there's the elevation stays the same for that distance. After that, you start to lose the grade you start to gain the grade separation there. So you'd probably looking again to about that second dirt access that's there now, plus or minus. That will have to be worked through UDOT to be able to make sure that we're meeting their needs and handling storm drainage and that kind of stuff.
Right, and so we've had preliminary talks with you. I don't know if you want to come up, AJ. So we've had talks with them in terms of what kind of improvements we do. So we're curious to get your thoughts on, because just so I'm correct, AJ, UDOT said it's up to the city in terms of what improvements do. So we're curious what improvements you're going to require on that.
So again, you need to look at our cross section on the roadway that we're doing right now. We've got a full redesign of Main Street from 3rd East all the way to this location. We'll look at that. It would be curb and gutter, storm drain, and probably a sidewalk at least covering the area from the intersection to the back of the C-store, the commercial area and the start of that, so that you have good pedestrian connectivity. We likely wouldn't try to take pedestrian connectivity all the way to the bridge or to the railroad tracks, just because it's
Yeah, road
There's not really anywhere for it, and so that's what we would be looking at on that. There may be some landscaping behind the buildings that you put there as well, so that you've got proper setbacks for landscaping, et cetera, up where the buildings back up to Highway 6. So those are the things that we would be looking at.
Okay.
I guess the question is you know where John's got about that leader is where you were talking about
Yeah,
you know,
roughly.
pedestrian access, and obviously that can connect into the neighborhood, but you know going to the end of the red line is what I would see is where you have true frontage, because then there's that pie-shaped parcel, which is actually UDOT, and so that takes away frontage that you have on Highway 6. So, but I mean, Norm's right. That would be a pedestrian access to kind of nowhere, because it starts to separate from the grade. And
So we have a requirement, but we are trying to be practical about it as
Right.
well.
Okay, we
So
appreciate that.
that's what we're trying to come up with. And Jason's got a good point, John. Your red line could go a little bit farther to the west to that where the pie-shaped piece that UDOT
well,
owns.
he's got it there.
He's got it.
It's
Okay.
it's
It's right
really
there. It's
Yeah.
right
a fine point.
So
right
so
there.
that's what we're looking at, is just what's practical and also meeting our code. That's what we're
I
looking at.
that would not be a piece of pie I would choose. Mine would really be. Why?
Well, and that's the thing is, at some point, if that overpass over the railroad tracks, you know, widens or something, then there may be something that can be done to make that pedestrian access. But at this point, there's not any plans to do widening all the way down that far over the railroad tracks, and so it's kind of a tricky thing of how do we have you meet the requirements to provide, you know, sidewalk pedestrian access when really, you know, you got some slopes there that make it really tricky and hard to make that feasibly work. So
Okay.
Okay. One other, so just clarification that Laura mentioned, this was this square footage area is usable active recreational space. So it's definition of that is in code, and y'all can talk to Lauren more about that definition as we start to roll through that project. So one item through here, there appears to be an overlap on this between, there's these two parcels here that based on the county recorder's website, the parcel map, it appears to be there's an overlap there. And so that would just need to be addressed and taken care of and looked at as part of this. Whether there's property acquisition, I don't know, that's something that you guys are going to need to work through on there, but it does appear that there's that overlap
Okay.
on the plat there within of the boundaries. So one of the other items, okay, we mentioned it a little bit before, that we'll want to start discussion on the asphalt width through here, not necessarily the right-of-way width, 55 foot, but which is actual overall right-of-way width on this, but the spec that was followed, which is what this does fall under, according to our design requirements, calls for 29 feet of asphalt. We've had some difficulties with that width, 29 feet, so we'd like to discuss potentially widening that out about 6 feet, well, it's 36 foot wide, so seven additional feet to get 36 feet of asphalt through there. That helps us with parking in front of, along the roadway, cleaning out for public works, snow plows, for emergency access as it goes through there, to discuss that additional extra width and anticipate pushing that curb back into that planter strip to account for that. So, just because we're
No wider right of way, just wider asphalt instead of
Less
less
park strip.
landscaping, more asphalt for fire access.
correct.
Okay.
So that'll be something we can talk about as we kind of.
Hey, John, maybe something on that I just thought about, and I don't think we got the full storm drainage, because it's a concept. Based on just the way you're using the space on the ground, it doesn't look like there's a retention basin or anything in here. So I'm assuming you're using infiltration galleries or R tanks. Is that right? or you're planning on that?
Yeah, there will be some ponds if we can, but primarily underground systems.
So does that impact things if we're reducing the park strip, and is that going to create kind of a
We'll just have to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't know. They'll just have to propose where they're gonna put their storm drain and what we can look at. And right now, what they're held to is 29 feet of asphalt, a 55-foot right of way. If we can make better use of that right of way and have a little wider asphalt, then we'll look at that. But again, we're not far enough along likely to answer that
Okay,
question at
I
this
just
point
wanted
in
to make
time.
sure that wasn't going to, domino into another issue of not having sufficient area for our tanks in the park strips if the park strips are a little bit narrower.
So that was a question that I actually just wrote down is what are you gonna do with your storm drain? That's something that you probably ought to start considering sooner rather than later because it is a fairly tight site with this density on it.
Yeah, and I started looking into what would be required underground for that.
Okay. John, can I bring up something else?
Yeah.
While we're on that topic, and I'm going to be looking at Chief Hurst and Jason and others. It seems like this becomes a regular discussion that we have. Are we planning on red curbing the whole everything in here, or street parking on one side, or how do we want to deal with that?
If you can get to those wider asphalt roads, that's going to help us. I mean, especially in snow removal, those really narrow roads are tough. People park on the streets.
Right. Because I think at this point, I think that the parking is being met, and our parking code, was changed a couple of years ago, and so there should be sufficient parking, but that's just something to think about in terms of if street parking is going to be allowed and if people will be able to utilize that. I mean, regardless if you need the parking or not, I guess that may be an option for, the warehouse / retail sales and service areas is, you can always apply for and suggest a shared parking agreement with those, because that row of parking in between the units and those future commercial or warehouse, I mean, that's a great candidate for shared parking because people that live across the street, that's really close access parking to them. So in our parking code, you'll see just below the table, there's a paragraph that talks about shared parking, and I think this is one of those that's a great candidate because your residents likely will be out during the day at work or whatever, and while those businesses are open, and then when the businesses close, people come home, and I think there's a really good way to think about and organize how all that parking is used.
Just curious, what's Santaquin's requirement for? Because I know in a lot of cities you can't park on the street.
That is correct. So that's what I was gonna bring out is that
April,
any of
November.
the city streets, you can't park on it
In the wintertime.
in the wintertime, overnight or within 24 hours of a storm. They can use it when it's not needed for snow or snow plowing. So,
Okay.
we're trying to help educate folks on that because we do have to have places for snow, and on a narrow road like that, it's pretty difficult to get a snow plow down that two directions.
And that's why this becomes a topic is I think in some circumstances it's fine if people park on the street, but in the wintertime they can park on the street. So that's why we need to make sure there's sufficient parking off the street, and that's why sometimes we just red curb it because we don't want people to get in the habit of, and again, unfortunately, people will rely on that if they end up not using their garage for parking. They end up using their garage for, a man cave or storage or whatever. So that's why this is something that's always prevalent on our mind when we do these reviews.
I just didn't know how deep we wanted to get into it at concept. But yeah, there'll be some issues, particularly on the corners, the clear view areas. And from my experience, shared parking, I know it's allowed by code. People can't afford homes, so they buy these kind of units and they have too many vehicles.
Right.
So that shared parking, they'll slowly start to eat that up. So it really depends on how strict or how strict the HOA is in policing that shared parking, because it won't be a police issue, but could be if it spills over into the street.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Any other thoughts on that one? No. Okay, to kind of go on that, the enforcement, as a lot of this area is common area, an HOA need to be created. And so those HOA, the CCNRs, there's no really, as Chief first mentioned, there's no enforcement of that from the city side, but that those CCNRs, as long as they aren't less restrictive than the city requirements, then say that's kind of what we look for when we review those.
Okay.
So make any corrections or comments on those, and I would anticipate that there would be some language in there within the CCNRs that discuss the enforcement of any shared parking if that request is approved by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Okay, already mentioned those parcels. Is this going to remain the name of it going to remain Erkenbrack, or is there going to be a proposed name change?
Well, we'll change the name at some point.
Okay.
And can I say the sooner the better on that?
Yeah.
The reason why is because this starts showing up on
Yes.
agendas, and if the public wants to follow along with what's going on with this development, changing the name halfway through the subdivision review process just gets confusing. We'll probably, in parentheses, refer to it as the Erkenbrack subdivision. Obviously, it's not going to be named that and platted that name, but
We'll come up with a name and put that on so we have that
that'd be
going
great.
forward.
Thank you. And please, no orchards or rocks or
What?
summits.
No summit? No Summit Orchard?
Everybody wants to name the subdivision after orchards, and it just becomes a confusing mess.
Okay. We'll look at what you have and make sure we're not confused with somebody else in the community.
Okay, let's see here. Already done that. Believe. Is there any other comments I may be missing? Any other thoughts?
I would just say for the developer and for the public, for the most part, on the residential side, you're meeting the development agreement, you're meeting code, and the development agreement amendment that was done just a couple of months ago. The only thing really, we've talked about storm drain and sewer and all that kind of stuff, but the only thing really that's still outstanding on as far as the development code goes is the parking and knowing what those uses are going to be to be able to make sure we understand that there is sufficient parking for it. But other than that, it appears to be, from all of our extensive review thus far, it appears to be meeting the development agreement, the amendment, and our city code. So,
Okay. And just with the commercial, in terms of phasing, the plan is to have the residential as one phase and the commercial as a separate phase.
and you can certainly propose that. That's
Okay.
something that as you go through the subdivision process, even though they're different parts of the subdivision, you can certainly to have that discussion and have that be phased.
Okay.
That's a future part of your preliminary plan, is making sure that you have phasing that works.
Okay.
All that kind of stuff.
So as part of the next steps, there is a checklist that we do provide, that kind of the items that need to be included on a preliminary submittal. So that includes all the geotech reports, the perk tests associated with those, traffic control, traffic impact statement, those type of things are all included on that preliminary. So those are the items that make sure you provide as part of it, so it doesn't hold up any of the application. So we will provide these comments, any others that may have been added. Again, we're kind of cleaning these up. We'll send these over to you so you have a copy of them. So we'll probably hold off until after the public hearing and after the review by the Planning Commission, so we can get it all comprehensive and included in one thing. So.
John, one thing I thought of
Yes.
is Summit Creek Irrigation has a line that.
Yeah.
You guys are aware of that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been in discussion with them.
All right.
Yeah, we'll be
Sure, random.
relocating.
Let's
All right.
add that on there, John, as a
Yep.
note that they'll need to coordinate that, because that goes right through the middle of that development.
Yep.
And so that you're aware, approval would be required from UDOT for the UDOT frontage, the access, the construction of that, and the design of that. Also from Summit Creek Irrigation Company, we need written approval from whatever the plans are that come from that. So those are two outside entities that we require to essentially buy off or approve the plans that are put forward, so that we make sure that we're meeting their needs.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments, thoughts? Okay, we'll, we'll work on getting these updated and over to you and be ready for, the planning commission tonight, so.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything?
Next on the agenda is the Hollow Flats preliminary plan. Just some background on this. This is part of a recent annexation, and before I get too far into it, let's have you guys state your names for the records, please.
I'm John Bowen with Ivory Development.
And Sean Herring with Region Engineering.
Okay. So, as I said, this was part of a recent annexation that was just recorded at the, was just recently annexed in the city, and this is the development that was associated with that and was included within a development agreement tied to that annexation.
So I would note what we talked about on the previous applicant. Let's get the name changed on this so that it's accurate with, it's gonna be moving forward as Hollow Flats.
Right.
Rather than Tanner Flats. The Tanner Flats or Tanner annexation or whatever was already used up by the county, and so it was changed to Hollow Flats. Let's make sure that that's also how we've advertised it. So the name on the front sheet needs to be changed and throughout the document, please.
So, with that, it's a proposed 140 lot subdivision. Again, this is it's kind of the big vacant area that's along Summit Ridge Parkway between Cedar Point and Stone Hollow on the west side of on the east side of Summit Ridge Parkway.
On the east side of the tracks.
On the
Sorry, the west side of the tracks, east side of the parkway.
You get a direction right there. This is the concept application, not the preliminary plan for it. So the action that would be taken by the DRC would be a recommendation or to the planning commission or a table if it's however the DRC decides to go on there. So with that, we'll proceed with going around the DRC for any comments or thoughts. Randy?
I have not gone through the addressing process since it's just preliminary at this point. I want to make sure there's not going to be big changes in it. But one thing that John and I did talk about is those entrance roads into that development will only be addressed on the interior street, not on the corner coming in. So that we don't
The
have,
lots.
right.
The lots will not have access there.
They'll just, they won't have a address attached to that side.
Right.
Yep.
It'll just strictly be on the interior street.
That's 4 corner lots, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that's these corners here.
Now, the other side of the
driveway-
streets there, we can assign 2 addresses, but those entrance roads, we don't want addressed off of that incoming street.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you.
That way, so the driveway, cars backing out onto the road wouldn't impact people turning in on those roads. So,
But other than that, I haven't gone through the addressing process yet, so.
okay. You first?
Wouldn't there be a fence along the parkway?
There will be along the parkway, but not those entrance roads, side street
Roger
there.
Well,
So let's talk about that. This is not within the Summit Ridge development. It does not fall under the development agreement. It falls under R10 zoning, and so we actually want to have a conversation about what fencing will or will not be done there
Along the parkway.
along the parkway
Well,
and against the railroad tracks
too.
as well.
Are you guys planning on doing that so that you have like a nice cohesive fencing, or are you gonna just let people do it themselves and we're gonna have a hodgepodge of fencing types?
I think we'd probably all rather have it cohesive.
I would assume
So-
we
Okay.
do I'm filling in for Skylar, but I would assume most typical Ivory developments we would do
Okay.
that.
So we would want you to show that on the plans, what you're gonna do there, making sure to take into account proper sight distances, where you come down to those roads where you drop down to a 3 foot, so we got proper sight triangles and all that kind of stuff, so.
Is there a standard in regards to masonry or what material?
We would recommend masonry there. We have some masonry standards in our code itself that you could look at. We are aware that the masonry that's across the street in other parts there is not available anymore, that specific style, but there is still masonry that can go there and could look good.
again, this is nothing that we can require of you. That's why we wanted to talk with you. So it's really up to you. I mean,
I was just curious what if there was a requirement.
There is no requirement. Again, this falls under the R10 zoning, and there is no requirement because these are single-family homes. If it were multifamily, then there is a requirement, but it's not multifamily. It's just single-family, 10,000 plus lots.
Yeah, likely I would assume we would do a fence. It's the same, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
okay, we just looked to see if you could give us that information of what you anticipate doing, and then putting that on the plans. That would help us, help us know what to expect as we work through this review process.
With that said, on the railroad track side, we'd anticipate that being more of a vinyl fence, similar to what's done further south and north.
South and north, yeah.
But you are welcome to do something different. I know that Summer Ridge has had issues with that vinyl fence, kids throwing rocks at it and stuff like that, and obviously that fence is visual, but a lot of the reason why that fence is there is to protect, from kids running down onto the railroad tracks. So it's up to you guys of what you feel like it's best for your particular development.
Yep. Okay.
No, all the stop signs, all the intersections look good. I would just be mindful about where you put the driveways on some of those lots. Some of them are like centered right in the intersections or on the corners. So, but that's the only other thing I had.
Okay. Good. Jason?
I noticed there's a valley view. We already have a valley view out there, right?
It's actually, I made the same thought. It's an extension of Valley View Drive to the.
Oh, it
on the
is?
other
Oh,
side of
so it's
Sunbridge.
good.
It's right across the street from it,
across
yeah.
the street.
Yeah, that'll work.
So,
I love it when a plan comes together.
No kidding, because we've done that before.
Yeah.
We've named them different streets going.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's Valley View Drive. I think I put Valley View Street.
I think we have a comment on that, yeah.
we do.
And then also Park Lane is right across from the park. So it turns out that those two tie right into the existing roads on the other side of the parkway.
Perfect.
How much, I know there's some topographical changes out there. How does that impact the corners and the sight distances and stuff on some of these driveways?
So they have a grading plan that we can look at and kind of get a feel for that. If I remember right, looking at the grading plan, Sean, and you can correct me, I think that you've got some 6 and 7% slopes coming into those intersections. So it's not super steep, but it's not flat.
Yeah, it's definitely not flat.
So we allow up to 10%. So that's a 3.5, and that one coming into the parkway. So I mean, it's going to be fairly reasonable, I think, from what I'm seeing on the grading plan. What's that one, John?
This one, it doesn't call it out, but there's a 5-foot grade drop from. So that one's pretty.
Yeah, so
pretty
at a
low
100-foot lot, you're going to be 5%. So it's going to be reasonable. Like, it is going to be downhill going into that, but not a lot you can do about that.
And that one's
Five on that one as well. So,
Okay.
I think it's fairly reasonable with what they have to work with there, knowing that everything drops off to the tracks. So.
There is one that here is quite steep. That that grading, that 12% does not meet that's too steep for our code. So as Norm said, a 10% minimum or maximum slope is what we'll need on there. So. Okay, Jason?
Yeah, valves on the culinary. Did I looked and I seen valves on the PI, but I looked at the utility sheets and I didn't notice.
Correct. They don't specifically call out. There is a label there that's kind of close to it.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
I don't think so, but yeah, their valve cluster of 4 on each leg is required.
Okay.
So, again, this is preliminary, so diving that deep into it, we'll have
Not
a
worry
more
about
final,
that? Okay.
But yeah, just so it's a good thing to note that valve cluster, again, a valve on each leg as it comes in each intersection will be needed. So.
Then I guess we could look. There was a PI drain. I had a question. Is there one, or is it?
There is
shown
one.
it at
There's one shown
right there. Okay.
This is the design low point
Okay.
in the development. It is mislabeled as a PI blow off, but
Yeah,
it
that-
needs to be a drain.
That's what I kind of figured. Where
There may be, one of the things we'll look at is to make sure that there's enough storage capacity within the our tank here to catch and hold whatever the volume of the PI that comes through here. And they say it is a 2-inch line that would go into there, but it'd be difficult if that starts filling up and water starts bubbling out of that inlet. So that's just something we need to look for, the capacity there for that storm drain.
And then the open space there, if you go to the south,
Yep.
Yes.
I'll pull up this one.
what is that? And do we even need it where we got a park so close?
So part of the development agreement did call for a park here to be as part of the overall development.
That was negotiated.
It was negotiated in. There is a design to it. It's not included in this plan set. I've requested that they include it just so it can be seen on what's going to be in there. It's more of a neighborhood park type layout that's been there.
So the thought on that was the main reason why that was negotiated is because then kids don't have to cross the parkway to be able to get to the other park that's on the other side. So there's more of a localized park for the folks in this development. And they are kind of isolated even from the north and the south. There's no connecting roads or sidewalks or anything other than the trail on the parkway.
Is this gonna be a project with an HOA or not?
At this point,
I don't believe there's a need for one.
No, I don't either, that's what I was
You don't
wondering.
plan to have an HOA, or do you have,
I'm not aware.
There's no plans for an HOA. on
but
it.
CC&Rs, yes, but no HOA.
No HOA.
So that'll be our park.
Right, that's what I was
Yes.
getting
Yep,
at.
that would be our city park, city dedicated park. So as we go through that, that's a good point, Sean. We'll want to coordinate with Public Works on the types of valves, sprinkler heads, timers, all that kind of stuff. We'll want to make sure and get a full, we've done that before on the stuff to the south in the
Yeah, we
hills,
would
so.
do the full package when phase four.
Four, right.
Comes in, yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, that's all I have.
Jason. Okay. Taylor?
The only thing I have is on that northeast corner, those two lots right there. Both of those lots are outside of the 250-foot radius from a fire hydrant. Looking at it, I don't think we need to add any more hydrants. I think the two closest hydrants can just be scooted in, and I think that'll satisfy everything and still meet that 250-foot radius throughout without any additional, so that's all I had.
Okay. Jason?
Yeah, we'll just comment on red lines. The only thing I wanted to say is regarding that park, we don't have any details of what's going to be included in that park, and with this being a preliminary plan, we'll need to see that.
Aside from,
Aside from Blue Line.
Yeah,
So
from
Blue
the
Line
Blue
did do a
Line.
design for them as part of the annexation.
Oh, okay.
That's actually included in the development.
And you could just even put a note on there consistent with park
Okay.
exhibit in the development agreement.
I just didn't see
that
that
would
in
be-
these plans, and
It's
so
not.
in terms of process, this is a preliminary plan because we just went through the annexation process. We felt like that satisfied the concept. However, when this plan does make it to the planning commission, we will do a public hearing just because, annexation, and we want to make sure that
This is a separate process from the annexation.
that we're doing a public hearing as part of the subdivision review process, even though we've felt like concept review was already satisfied. So just kind of know what to expect there, that when this eventually is ready to go to the planning commission, we'll also notice for a public hearing there. But other than that, I'll just chime in on red lines that we have.
Okay. Norm, if you don't have anything, I'll just jump in.
Go ahead.
Okay. So again, we've already talked about the name change to match more of hollow flats as the annexation was. Just a note to make sure that you'll need to coordinate with the post office so that they're aware of that we can get their MBUs in the correct locations to appropriately, so they can meet their requirements as they deliver mail to the proposed development. So one item, we may need to look at maybe renumbering the phasing on this, because phase 3, it comes down, we do require that we have 2 points of access for phases. Right now, it appears that if phase 3 was built before phase 5, then they'd have one intersection that everyone would be funneling to. So it may be that if we start renaming or rephasing some of them to where the outside phases are towards the end, and then the 2 frontage ones and the 2 interior phases would be done, and then phase 3 and 4 wouldn't, that wouldn't be in conflict with our phasing requirements on there. So 5 would need 6 to go in, so I anticipate it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5 or 6 on the north and south side of it. So keep kind of going through. There needs to be, as we go through, accesses for these lots that back onto Summit Ridge Parkway. Fence will help delineate that, but we'll also need a note on the plats that say no access onto Summit Ridge Parkway. Also, there's that is kind of highlighted in red here. That is currently owned by USP, which is a partnership with Ivory. And then this acreage here is under strictly just Ivory. So when we go to recordation, there'll either need to be a line on the plat sheet for USP, or Ivory will need to get the full name of that parcel into their name. So that just helps with the recording side of things, trying to get that all taken care of. Just kind of clean up note, match the hatching, either increase the size of this one. I mean, it's still there, but it's reversed. Just those 2 don't match. Already talked about fencing. Couple of items. The R10 zoning requires, again, 80 feet of frontage. Right now, all the corner lots are short of that width-wise, and so it would be possible to kind of do a knuckle on these to kind of offset that and to give lots that full 80 feet of frontage, which is different than the Summit Ridge development, which allows for a little bit smaller. But this is an R10 zoning, so those frontages are required to be 80 foot.
Is that measured on the right of way or the setback?
This one's on the right of way.
It's 30 feet back from.
So
So
this
at
area,
30 feet back of the side lot lines, it has to be 80 feet.
John's
If
saying
it's-
R10, it's measured at the
if it was a cul-de-sac, which these are not,
Right.
then you could do the
But to make it work, they're gonna have to do a cul-de-sac or a
Or
partial
bulb out.
knuckle or a bulb
Bulb
out or
out,
something
correct.
of that nature to be able to accommodate that.
and really the you know, the whatever you call it, the specifications of that bulb out and how deep that bulb out will really be as far as you need to go in order to get that setback at the 30 feet.
So we've given the code, right, on that one?
yes.
So we've given you the code to go look at on that to figure out how to make that work, Sean.
So at this point, it's just a curve. It's not a
Yeah.
cul-de-sac, and that's why it's measured at the road.
Gotcha.
But if it becomes a bulb out, then it's measured at the front setback, or a cul-de-sac, it's measured at the front setback. And so you'll just have to bulb it out until you get the appropriate 30 feet at the front setback.
An example, just north. There's that knuckle there.
Perfect, yeah.
There's other examples throughout cities. That's one of them that's right close to it. So,
Easy enough.
then a note on corner lots. Again, making sure that we have 95 feet of frontage on both sides of those. And that's kind of a continual note on a lot of the corner lots. So, again, we are referencing the section of code that we're referencing on those.
And again, this is different than what you've done in the past because they've all fallen under the PC zone and the development agreement. This is strictly the R10 zone that has different requirements.
One note just here, the kind of this purple line, it basically asking what's that referencing. It doesn't appear to match the phasing. So if they are the phasing lines, they'll need to be adjusted appropriately. Again, we've already made that, looked at that one.
John, did you talk
Yes.
about the restriction of access on those lots that are right at the entrance of the?
Yeah, we talked
Okay.
about that earlier. Again, kind of same notes there. We've got that comment shown there in Valley View Drive. A lot of those are repeat comments. We're just kind of showing. Again, setbacks follow the R10 zoning, so that building setback detail need to be updated. And then, again, same kind of follow-up note on that one. Again, include comments on the park. Regarding the sewer as it runs out to the kind of the northeast, approval from the railroad and appropriate property owners. Our understanding is that there may be a piece of property back here that is not owned by the railroad tracks. And so just if they're with that, they'll need to be clarified and make sure that any easements or anything are coordinated between the railroad and any property owners that are along there.
There is a document that I've seen that I believe from where we own property there to the north and where this annexation, this property starts, there's I think a 20-foot right of way there that somebody owns that's not the railroad. I believe the previous developer owns that, or the overall master developer of Summit Ridge owns that.
Yeah, I know he starts right there where that existing manhole ties in and goes north. I haven't seen anything south.
Okay.
of
Well,
that.
it'll have to either be with that or well, actually, I think it's farther south, because that, according to the county, where that manhole is actually Santaquin City. I believe there's another leg of that coming down that's privately owned, that's not railroad, that would benefit the property there.
Okay. We'll double check that and
Yep.
grant whatever we need to. And that's really the only route, unless you've seen something different.
Well, the other thought was I recognize that there's is a possible go across the railroad tracks, but I understand there's a lot of other things that come into play with that, with getting anything. You're still having to work with them to get right of way through here, but again, depth may come into play for the sewer, where the railroad require you to put that line. All that kind of stuff comes into play. So just put it there. If that's the most advantageous route to run it, then that's the route. So. And again, an easement for that in Santaquin City's name would need to be provided for that off-site sewer. Again, I know all our tanks need to be a minimum of 5 feet back from behind the curb as part of that. So part of it would probably be underneath the sidewalk. One thing that we found with other R tanks that have been constructed in town, we found that if they haven't been built appropriately to handle traffic, and so we've had damage done to our tanks from cement trucks and stuff. They've been doing construction to drive over those, so appropriate traffic rating would need to be provided on top of those appropriate backfill material to minimize the chance of damage to those. So
it's actually damaged the sidewalk above that as well in one of the developments that we've had. And of course we have warranty on that, but at the same time, we just need to make sure that those are protected somehow, whether you go to Storm Tech or something that can handle a little better the traffic rating. I know our tanks are rated for that, but It just seems that during construction, especially, that's a challenge with protecting those.
I made that comment. We've already talked about that one.
Sean, maybe that has a concrete cap with rebar in it or something like that as the sidewalk or driveways. Maybe that's a way to do it.
Okay, we'll look at what we've done on others.
Just a note here, you are showing a storm drain line within Summit Ridge Parkway. Is that a new line? Or
I think that's existing there, isn't it?
we actually don't have any, the only storm drain that's within Summit Ridge Parkway is just the curb inlets to the sumps. And there's
Oh,
an
not
interconnecting
connecting.
pipe. There's not one that runs along the length of the roadway there.
Yeah, we'll remove that line.
So, just for clarification, that would need to go out. Again, some of these lines that, for the storm drain, it appears, the line weight looks like they're showing as new, they're existing, and so just some of those updates to kind of clean up the lines there. Again, there's the symbol there in the middle, whether that be the center of the intersection or the midpoint of the intersection or valve tree, or it's just not showing what that symbol is representing. And then we've kind of already talked about the fence. That existing, again, that fence looks like it's not, it looks like it's proposed to be new.
That
It
fence is
looks like
existing. I'll talk with Skylar and see what he wants to propose, if anything there.
Okay. Again, we've already talked about that note, same one. We do need so we have the ESA that was done, the phase 1 ESA that was done with the project. However, we do need a geotechnical report for the site. Again, similar things as before, cross-section, footing, storm drain perk rates, etc. need to be included in that storm drain report. And that kind of leads to
You said storm drain report, you meant geotech report,
Geotech
but we
report,
also need a
yes.
storm drain
And storm
report.
drain report, yes.
We've got calculations, but we don't have the full-on report showing the contributory areas and the storage that's being provided by those within those contributory areas.
Yep. And that's this note right here. And there's the section, reference the section there, 1148, that you'll want to look at.
Yeah, we've looked at a few options and kind of wanted to have that discussion about the storm drain, where we've packed it full of our tanks. Is that
Yes.
the only other option really would be to remove 3 lots down there, and we've talked with Ivory about this, and build a pond, a big pond.
Kind of down right here where
Yeah, it'd be right there at
little
that little
is.
spot.
So Sean, the way that it appears that you've designed it with the R tanks, there's no trunk lines or no,
Right.
it's very localized. It's very just this area, and that's why we need those contributory areas. Again, if you go to a pond, that's gonna change things and it's gonna increase lots of manholes and pipe and that kind of stuff, so.
It would be, exactly, it'd be a lot.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the city really has a preference in there, or is it just whatever we finalize?
So
and
we're
whatever we
okay
decide?
either way, it just has to, we need to protect the
Yeah.
infrastructure and provide the storage that's required.
Okay. That could be an option anyway, that
Mhm.
Ivory was playing with. losing some lots.
On any of the underground retention, whether it be our tanks, whether it be Storm Tech or something, we do require that a clean out or inspection port is included on the opposite end from the curb inlet to allow us to do any type of maintenance or anything that we need to do on those as we roll through. And so just to help minimize the effort when it comes to Jason's crews, public works crews, maintaining those as we roll forward.
Again, we don't require trunk lines, we don't require that you have lots, but it's how can you make like you're saying, how can you make the system work on the site that you have?
And then just again, it kind of goes back to the geotech report. Just based on other developments that have occurred in the area, we anticipate that all the native material won't be able to be used. That plan on importing 100% import of A1A.
For trenches and roadway cross sections.
Yes. And on that, there appears to be a lot of grading that's going to be done on the site. Because just all the dark lines through here are indicating a change, either cut or a fill. And so part of that is we need additional information to see if a mass grading permit would be needed for the site. Because there's a lot of material that's got to be moved around there. Not saying that it is required, but that additional information, such as your cut fill amounts, to show where material is going to be moved to, how it's going to be, how the lots are going to be protected, future homes, so they're not safe. Because if they're built on that fill material, what means are in place to protect those homes going down the future?
What's your strategy there? Are you balancing on site, or you having to export, or what's happening?
It's fairly balanced. The initial plan was to come in and do mass grading of the entire site. It sounds like the new plan is just to focus on phase 1 for now. I can provide you with whatever information you need as far as cut and fills and all that, but it's fairly surprisingly balanced.
And I think that's what would be the kicker, is if you have to take a lot of things off site, then that's going to be quite the impact to some ridge. If you can balance it all on site, then it probably is just going to be grading as part of the subdivision and not necessarily
It's fairly balanced. I mean, the only stuff material would be coming on site to meet spec, but the site overall is fairly balanced. A lot of dirt moving, but it's moving from here to here on site.
So I'm going to also caution you on the strategy of just doing a phase at a time, because especially where you're going to be using potentially that road access that's being built for residential use, that road access is not going to necessarily be built for trucking use. So you really need to look at it and make sure, again, if you're going to do it that way, it's probably going to be a mass grading permit rather than just doing mass grading under our subdivision code. So there's two ways to do it within Santaquin City. If you're like Jason had said, if you're taking a lot off site, you're going to need a mass grading permit, because that's the only way you can take it and market it or do whatever you need to do, because it starts impacting everything off site. If you're balancing on site and you're not having impacts to existing residents, existing roads, or future residents because you're going through there to have to bring stuff in and out, that's a challenge. So you really need to look at the strategy on that and make sure that your future residents aren't being, in fact, I know on another area, we've done something similar to that, where we've said you can't use the residential roads to haul stuff out. So just because they're not built for it. And it also has a huge impact on your future, our future residents, your future purchasers.
Yeah, I don't believe our first phase has a ton of earth moving, but if we have to.
But if the back phases do, then you really need to make sure that you're considering how you're doing that and minimizing the impact of those that are going to potentially be there moving forward.
Yes, understood.
So
just trucking in all that A1A material, trenching and everything would be quite an amount.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Again, you've got 3 accesses to the parkway, so you could certainly do one and be fine, and probably even do 2 and be fine. But the problem with it is where it looks like you've got some pretty heavy grading at the back of it, and the last thing we want to have happen is all of that grading material have to be brought out when there's 3 sets of phases already done and complete up against the parkway. So you just really need to look at that strategy and make sure that we're doing what's the best for the residents. And again, if there are going to be impacts, then you're going to end up with a mass grading permit that is a whole separate process that we have to go through. Sean's familiar with that, but there's 2 ways that you can do it within the city. One is with a mass grading permit, but the other one is through our subdivision. But the subdivision side of things doesn't allow you to do some of the things that are done under a mass grading permit. So we really need to know what your strategy is on that as well. And is that what you're saying here, is that
Yes.
GR 1, 2, 3, and 4 are separate grading phases? Is that what?
No, that's just a sheet key.
Oh, those are key sheet. That's
Like
a
I
key
said,
sheet.
the initial
Okay.
plan before the market changes was
Right.
to go in and mass grade everything.
Right.
Kind of how it was designed. And
So
thought
again,
about, but-
we need to look at it. We need to have more details and make sure we understand, does it fall under our subdivision code or does it fall under a mass grading permit? That's really what we're going to have to look at. And really it's going to have to do with impacts and any off haul that you're going to have to look at is probably what it's going to come down to, the two major points of that.
Is that, I mean, we can provide it now, it takes just a few handful of minutes there, but is that a preliminary thing, or is that?
It is preliminary. We
You
look
know,
at grading
you
at
want it
preliminary. Yep, we look at grading. And so again, you have to realize that we're looking at this,
Yeah.
the entirety of this, because stepping forward, as you're aware, final is not, only comes back to this body. So you've got to get through preliminary, through DRC, Planning Commission, and City Council, and meet all the requirements through the preliminary side of things before you can even submit or get approved, I mean, for the finals. So if you guys have a conversation after this and Skylar and you decide that you need a mass grading permit, turn it in tomorrow, let's get it going so that we're moving down that road for you and making sure that things can happen accordingly. We don't want it to be a holdup, but we don't have enough details to tell you whether you need one or not now.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, any other thoughts on that? Questions? Okay. This whole sheet,
Sorry,
this
maybe I do. If we phase it though, so one of those accesses is still open where we don't have closed.
Sure,
homes.
if you've got.
If we stage it and rephase it that direction, then we're okay.
You could be, but again, also remember in the development agreement, the park is required at a certain number of units, so it's almost like you have to go 1 and 2 and then 4, that was what I remember had been talked about. So just recognize that there's other requirements besides the hauling off and all that kind of stuff. You gotta look at the whole picture.
Gotcha.
So.
okay, anything else? Nope. Then this area is not in a hillside overlay zone. So, grading requirements, those become considerably less.
Individual lot
Individual lot
grading
grading.
plans are not
Correct.
required here.
Yeah.
That's essentially the difference.
Yep. So that sheet,
looks
wasn't
pretty
needed
good.
on that one.
It looks good. Works well everywhere else, but it's not required here.
Nope.
You can still turn it in if you want to.
If you want to give yourself lot grading standards.
That's the only other last little bit of comments we've got. Just so everyone's aware, we are getting 36 feet of asphalt on all the roads in this development. So, okay, that's all the comments that we have here. Anything else? Not, again, this is actions that could be taken by the DRC is one. We could provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission, or we could table it. Depends on where we want to go.
Well, I'm thinking we have our options, but based on what I hear from engineering, there's still some information that's lacking that it's hard for us to move forward to Planning Commission if we have unanswered questions ourselves. So, is that correct, John? So with that said, I'd make a motion that we table the Hollow Flats at Summit Ridge preliminary plat until we get more information, particularly related to grading and some other utilities, and
Okay. Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, been tabled. We'll send this information over to you and work on getting these answers. If you have questions, feel free to give a shout.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Have a good day.
Guys, next item on the agenda is the Ridley's Phase 3 concept. And I'm going to add in this is Sean Young. He's with AWA Engineering, and he's the design engineer for the project. Sean, can you hear us? Don't know if we can hear him. Let me see what.
that's probably why. Have Sean talk now.
Sean, can you hear us?
Yes.
you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Excellent.
Volumes.
Just volume down, huh?
Nice job. Nice job. The IT
Sometimes
wages today.
Sometimes you gotta be smarter.
I'll send you a bill later.
Okay. Okay, Sean, so, now we've got you, well, this is a proposed, 2-lot subdivision, the next phase for the Ridley's development. So this is, located, I'll pull this sheet up, kind of the overall site plan. It's proposed for 2 additional lots, directly east of the 3 lots that are currently under construction right now. And so there are a couple additional lots that will be included on this proposed subdivision. Again, this is the concept, so there's no action taken today. It's just providing feedback on the development. So with that, we'll go around the room. Randy?
I think we looked at addressing on that, didn't we, Camille? And they're addressing off of that 500 east, which that's really the only one. I mean, we
All
don't
the
have a
public
main
roads, that's
street
right.
there, do we?
Mhm.
So
I guess for, police and fire, kind of direction for addressing, because all these lots are kind of tucked back in here. Try to remember what we did for lot 9. Do you remember?
it's addressed off of 500
It's addressed
as
off
well.
of 500 East.
Mhm.
So, what would be needed? Because all this back here will be private roads, accesses, etc.
From my perspective, where it's gonna be commercial, I don't have an issue with it, because typically, when we get dispatched to commercial, they give us
The business name.
the business name, so.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
That's it.
Anything else, Randy? Okay. Chief first.
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. Jason.
Notice on the water line, do we want to stub in fire risers for any potential buildings into the properties? No? We just don't know what they are.
We'll put it in the wrong place probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, always.
I just noticed there was a water meter, 2-inch water meter stubbed in on, I think, what is that lot right there?
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, I don't know if,
So lot 11, the water main's not under pavement currently. So our intention was they can connect fire and hydrants and water meters as lot 11 develops.
yeah.
Just because on the west side of that property line is an 8-inch water main.
If it runs up, and this is the water line loop that's being done with phase 2
Okay.
of the Ridley. So they do have the water line looping that extends to where 5th East kind of turns back to the north off of this angle. It's roughly about right up here, approximately. It's where they're making the connection to the culinary line and running it up.
So lot 10, will the water line be underneath the asphalt?
Yeah, so that one is underneath beneath the asphalt. I'll need to check with the proposed user and see if they are using a fire sprinkler system.
Okay.
Right now we have a fire hydrant, and obviously we have the culinary water service, but I'll need to check to see if they need like I said, a line for fire sprinklers.
Okay. I noticed also there wasn't a valve going north, but I don't necessarily think there needs to be one. Could you have one at the very end of the line on each end? And I'm okay with that. I mean, it's not like we're going to be turning off a lot of water. So
So you're talking about a valve cluster here
Yeah.
at this connection point.
and even up in the corner there, John, to the south, they're a little farther east.
Oh, at this side.
I don't. There's one on the end of the line, and it's not really going anywhere. So I don't necessarily think we need to.
Because
go in there, unless you can think of a reason that we'd need one.
I think you'd be turning off. You'd basically, if you put a valve there, you'd be shutting off access to
Yeah.
1 or 2.
Yeah,
So
I
this
think we're okay
3
on
lots
valving.
there.
So Sean, a quick question for you. We want to also make sure that we're not tying anything off from lot 9, right? Lot 9 is already previously approved, and I think that use that was going to be there is now not going to be there, but we want to make sure that we've still got an FTC or a fire connection there before we asphalt.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, so all the same utilities are going to that lot. We're just really extended, we put a stub off of that main for people
Okay.
connection.
Okay.
It's just that connection coming sooner than later.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was just, as we were getting at that, we just do it before we asphalt, that's the biggest thing.
Yep, that's great.
So, just kind of on that, all of the water lines and sewer lines within this development are city owned, aside from the irrigation. And so easement, you do show those easements here, but we would need those as you know for each of those lines. So on that, so you're kind of the reason you've got this 8-inch line that runs across this north corner of lot 11 is so that it's outside of the asphalt. Is that what the intention is? I get.
Yeah. Let's see. You're not actually sharing your screen, so I'm kind of just guessing whatever kind of.
Really? Well,
You're
it's telling me
fine.
I'm sharing it, so let me try sharing it again. How's that? You see that one?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
So it's on this north end here.
Right. I think what we were doing is we needed cover over the pipe. The grade goes down so steeply that one of our challenges was getting the grade and providing enough separation between water and sewer. And we didn't want to tear up the existing asphalt that we're just putting in right now. So we were connecting just shy of where that new paved access way will be, so we're not turning into the asphalt and continue it along. But the concept plan, I mean, there's no way we're going to be able to just put a building in that little area. So it's probably going to just be landscaping.
Okay. Jason, anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay. Taylor, fire.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Jason.
Yeah, just a couple things. So one for process, Sean. This is a concept plan, so we do have you on the agenda tonight for Planning Commission, which will be accompanied by a public hearing. Are you planning to be here tonight, or do we need to prepare to have you on Zoom?
You can prepare to have me. If you can have me on Zoom, that'd be terrific.
Okay, we'll get that set up and send that off to you, and we'll plan accordingly that way. If I remember right, I think you're probably smack dab in the middle of the agenda, so yeah, kind of like today. Just bear with us as we get through some of those other items.
No worries. What time does Planning Commission start this evening?
At 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And then the other thing I just wanted to say, and I know we have a red line and we can talk about that. So looking at the plan, Sean, Law 8, that access that goes to the north, there was an easement that was done so that you had appropriate second frontage. We're at a spot here where now that you're creating more commercial lots, we've recognized, and I don't know, John, if you want to go to the next page, you're kind of creating a remnant parcel that's not really usable. A couple ideas there is obviously we can alter the easement, the access easement, but if you turn that up a little bit sharper, maybe you can get enough space to actually have a usable lot for another commercial business, another commercial lot. Our code doesn't allow for remnant parcels like this that are not usable, that aren't developable. I guess if you wanted to propose that be like a little landscaped area, or maybe, I don't know, maybe storm drainage comes into play, or maybe it's just a little seating area, park type atmosphere.
Yeah, I think at this point, I mean, we're allowed to have up to 3 lots with this minor subdivision. Is that correct?
So what you're talking about is you qualify for a streamlined process if it's 3 lots or less.
Right. So since we only have 2, maybe it's worthwhile turning that into a lot right now, and then that's really just going to be landscaped in the future.
Yeah, and I think right now, I don't know what the building envelope would look like in there. It's probably pretty small and unusable. That's why maybe that access, you turn that to the northeast a little bit sooner, to give yourself a little bit more space for a really small business. You know, I don't know if you have a snow shack there or whatever, but whatever the case, we've just got this remnant parcel there that's unusable, and before we can approve these 2 lots, we need to figure out what to do with that piece.
Would you allow, I mean, at some point in time, would you allow having parking along that edge, and then just essentially having a big park strip behind it?
Yeah, you could include that as part of lot 11 and be a part of your parking, as long as we can maintain the access for the water line and we can have access for those other 3 lots that were previously created. It could be something different than what you have shown.
We just need to see some use for that rather than it just being some remnant parcel that's unusable.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think in that case, I think what you just said, Norm, probably makes a lot of sense if we just make that part of lot 11.
Sure, sure. You could have that be part of lot 11 and have it be parking or landscaping to meet code or whatever.
Picnic area, whatever.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's how we'll proceed. That makes a lot of sense. So.
Okay, that's probably the main thing that I have. But again, we'll look at red lines and we can chime in as needed.
Yep.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, we'll keep kind of rolling through. Unless you have anything else, Norm, that you wanted to add? Nope. Okay. One thing that we wanted to discuss was, granted, we recognize these are private accesses and rolling through here, but some things that need to be starting to take into consideration is storm drainage and when those improvements are going to be going in, such as curb and gutter, the roadway storm drainage requirements and such. I know
you're talking a lot about along 500 East, right, John? The diagonal 500 East.
Well, say you'd have if lot 11 brings in this, the sidewalk would be
right. The frontage would have to be finished on that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. But then, say you do have some storm drainage swells that are coming in through here. I'm anticipating that the lot improvements that are along here are
I would think
curb and gutter.
Either way, that frontage needs to be improved because they can't just leave that as a remnant parcel. It's got to be included somehow.
I'm talking.
And based on where it's at, Sean, it can't remain as part of that larger parcel that we've been shaving lots off of. I think it needs to be addressed now and not something kicked down the can as something in the.
Yeah, I mean, we'll like I said, we'll incorporate that into lot 11, and then we'll just improve along the frontage there with the sidewalk.
That works. That'll be great.
Similar to lot 8 with the car wash, we'll put in the curb gutter and storm drain improvements as each lot develops, and each lot will self-contain their own stormwater. Lot 8 did put in, I believe they put in curb and gutter along there, along that.
Curb and gutter is coming along with the site as well.
And that'll be very similar to how lot 10 and 11. Lot 11, we have no idea. That's just what's left from what the proposed user of 10 wanted and what we were left with after lot 8. So, but yeah, I mean, when those do develop, we'll make sure to include curb gutter and sidewalk if necessary, and self-contain the storm drain for stormwater.
Okay, yeah, and then just between here and there, making sure that what swells you have are appropriate so that we don't start to impact, the home that's up here further to the north and the development further to the north. So, I've already discussed those. The storm drain, just to clarify, that storm drain report and the calculations on here, as we start to roll forward on this, as we start to get preliminary and final applications coming in. I believe that was all that we have on here. Is there any other thoughts, comments, or questions?
Not from my end. I think this one's pretty straightforward also.
Yep. Okay, if there's nothing else, again, this is a concept, so no actions needed. And we'll work on getting these over to you probably next day or so after whatever comments are included from Planning Commission tonight.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the site plan for the Nebo School District Animal Labs. So
you can stop sharing, John.
Thank you. You're probably right. see if don't have anyone else via online, do we need to keep?
Yeah, that's what we're
Okay.
We can end it. I think that's your host, we might have to.
I will go ahead and end that then. And no one else was on, so we're not kicking anyone off. So, okay. So proposed. If you wouldn't mind, Mike, state your name for the record, please.
Mike Anderson with Nebo School District.
Thank you. Well, this is a site plan for, my understanding is a temporary relocation of the animal lab from the high school. Was there and to construct that some animal housing structures down here off of 400 East and up here adjacent to the Highline Canal. It's a site plan application that's reviewed and approved by the DRC for this. And so with that, again, this is I don't know if you guys are familiar with the animal lab and what they do. They do house livestock at the site and be used for educational purposes. So it is an approved use for the site. So it's making sure they meet code on it, and then have appropriate services to serve the site. And then we'll as we go through this. So if not, we'll go around. Brandy, have anything?
I think I've assigned an address 975 north on 400.
Okay.
Before we were just using like intersection addressing. And there's how many buildings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or
We
what?
got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
there's-
and silos.
Yeah, that's actually not updated. I don't know where the updated one went that I sent. That's more. There's actually three buildings on that south end. The driveway, everything west of that driveway coming in is not going to be.
So essentially, these units
Yeah.
here.
I sent an updated drawing to Norm and Jason, I believe. And then the three silos will go in between those other buildings.
So the
But there's-
silos would go.
Silos would go there. And then there's one more building to the.
John, let me send this to you really quick. I apologize. I didn't
Okay.
notice that you weren't included on that. I'll forward it to you and you can open it up so we can have that discussion.
Yep.
These buildings are already being built, right? You could probably just point them out to us.
Yeah, that's another thing is I've still have never seen anything for a permit
Right.
for buildings at all.
We're
So,
going to talk about that for
Okay.
here in a bit.
Okay. Okay. So that's the access coming off that northern road, the canal road, and the 3 units and the 3 silos.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 buildings and 3 silos.
Correct.
Okay. Trying to get the best view that we can see those.
So there's 5 buildings.
Okay.
Is there 5 buildings or is that Northland parking? Is that parking or a building?
That's
That
it's
would
just
be a
open.
building, so it's
It
right.
is a building, open lean-to
Okay.
kind of.
So there's structures, not necessarily buildings.
Right, 3 are buildings, the 2 are structures, the
Okay.
2 long.
The 2 north and south
North and
ones are
south are just-
structures, but they're not buildings.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So,
I don't have anything else.
anything else?
No.
You first?
Is that a fence that goes around it?
Yes.
Nice. Just in case some animals escape, they're still trapped in there. So is the main access off of, what is that official road?
Yes, it's a
Call.
county road. We call it the county road that goes by the canal.
Okay.
That's the official name.
official access.
It would be, and we've talked to the school district about that. We certainly wouldn't want to have that accessing that close to that intersection on 400 East. So that
What
that
they're
is
using now.
what's that?
What
the
they're
one they're
using
using now, yes, for construction, yes.
All right. I
So-
don't really have anything.
Okay. We tried to get that far enough away from the intersection and on the minor road rather than on that major
That was the
road.
only question I really had.
Okay.
Jason?
I'd seen the water line coming in off of, I think, Royal Land. Is that what was planned to do?
Well, that's a question. We need to talk about that. So,
Bathrooms? Are there going to be bathrooms for individual?
There's not gonna be any bathrooms there.
Okay.
This is just for housing animals and for, teaching stations, the animal lab, to replace the one that was at Payson High School.
Yeah, it's a great program. My daughter went through that. It's an awesome program.
so that does bring up a question. If you're not going to have sewer there, are you going to have porta potties? You're going to have something there to be able to have sanitary needs?
Yeah.
Okay.
There will be a hand washing station in one of the buildings, but not restroom facilities.
So you'll have to have a sump for that of some sort for a drain?
Yep.
Okay. We'll want to make sure that we get that on the plans.
Okay.
Okay. Taylor?
My biggest concern is having a fire hydrant somewhere.
How close to the structure do you need them?
It needs to be 250 feet.
And does it need to be obviously somewhere where you can drive to it and hook up to it, right? So the best case scenario on that would be up on that canal road,
Yeah.
the road that's adjacent to the canal.
Well, is that southern structure within 250 feet of that road?
Well, if the hydrant comes down the lane, it would be probably, if the hydrant were, or the PI, or the culinary line comes down there. Originally, you've got the culinary line coming from the south, but I understand there's some challenges with an adjacent property owner to try and get that going through. Is that my understanding as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, we would like to look at maybe coming down Ginger Gold Road, coming that direction.
Okay, so we've talked about that, and I sent you an email. I assume you're not gonna wanna be drilling a well then, to try and,
We would prefer not to,
yeah,
but.
that's probably a good
our
plan.
only
Be-
option,
Because
and
you'd also have to provide fire flow from that well, so that's gonna be a pretty big well. We can talk about that, and, you know, we can, there is, as I indicated in my email to you, there is some challenges with the property there. We're not sure who owns that property in between where our property is and where your property is. Whether that, I believe that the developers to the west of you for Stratton Acres did some survey work there and figured all of that stuff out, but I'm not sure we know how that all works, John, as far as whether we can even get through that property. We just have to make sure we have easements for what we need there for that water line.
Okay. Anything else, Taylor?
No, just the fire hydrant. Anything else really where it's school district and educational, it really falls under the state fire marshal's office. So
Okay.
any type of fire requirements are gonna come from the state. So
Okay. Jason?
I don't really have anything. I just want to reiterate that this is an appropriate use in our animal rights code 10.64, temporary animal care, specifically for educational purposes, 4-H, FFA is something that's allowed. So just want to reiterate this use in this particular area as being in compliance with our zoning.
Okay. Norm, do you have anything else?
I think we've talked about everything other than just the building permit. I understand you need a building permit to be able to get permanent power there, or even temporary power there, so we're still waiting on seeing something for that. I know we've talked to Matt over there, and he indicated that we got some stuff coming, but we've not seen anything to date on that. So we want to see that for both the water line coming in and the building permit for the power to get power to you. The power company requires us to sign off on that, even though you guys do your own building inspections. We still need to set a plan so that we can approve the connection
That's
for
something
both
they need to tie it to.
the utilities for both the power and the water.
So I talked with you the other day, we filled out a permit application, I guess.
But I still need to approve a plan before I can have something to tie that power to, as far as.
A building plan, right?
Right.
You need a building plan that you don't have right now.
I don't have anything, no.
Okay. So somebody's done some building plans for you. Somebody's done structural and, roof trusses and snow loads and all that kind of stuff. He needs to see that so that he can get that through the process to even approve the
I looked
power.
at the power out there and it's good, and I've tagged it even, but I can't call it in because I don't have anything to tie it to, so.
Okay.
And because there's a utility connection for the water as well, that also goes along with that. We will need to look at water dedication and water impact fees, those types of things as we go through that, and I think we've just discussed that, so. What we would recommend is to have you take the feedback that we've given you now and go update your plan and get building plans in, get a water line drawn, give us the data that we need for the easements or for the access to get the water line over there, and I think we should be good to go.
I think if I remember right from what you've told me, these are existing buildings there that are being torn down and reconstructed in the new site. Is that correct? Or are they new buildings?
That was the
Original
intent
plan?
at the beginning, but they found out they've just used a bunch of new material
Okay.
rather than trying to reuse some of the,
Okay.
you might see some
Okay.
tin on, sheeting on the roof, but that is all new material, so.
Anything else?
The only thing that to keep in mind with that too is these would have to be stamped by an engineer because there's public use going into it. These kids are not employees of the school, so they're considered public, and they would have to be approved by and stamped by an engineer.
Okay, anything else? Say we've pretty well gone over. Again, this is a site plan application, and so the DRC would make do an action on this particular item to go.
So Mike, just be aware, there's two processes that we're talking about. You got the building permit process and you've got the site plan process. The site plan's being handled in this meeting today, and the building permit is handled with what you're talking about and what Randy's needing to be able to get that going for you. So at this point in time, John, I would make a motion to table, as we still need to see where the water line's gonna come in and how that's gonna be handled, where the hydrant's gonna be for fire, and the gray water sump that's gonna be used for that hand washing sink. So I'd make a motion to table at this time.
Okay, got a motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Jason Callaway. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, so Mike will kind of add some detail to these. I just added it so we can make sure we add it,
Okay.
and we'll get these comments over to you. In the meantime, I think you start working on addressing some of those things, like with Randy.
Just a
'cause they are-
comment too, the information for the building plan part can be submitted anytime. You don't have to wait for this to be approved to submit those to me and get those in the works.
Yeah. So that way he can start reviewing those as well. So they're two kind of parallel paths that Norm mentioned earlier.
So John, just as a note, that email that I sent to you earlier with the plan you're showing also has water usage for their ags, so we'll need to look at that and evaluate that. We'll do that and then send that back as part of our red lines of what's needed, if anything further on that.
So the documents that I sent to you on the water usage that was at Payson High School. So you said when Matt and I met with you that need to be a monthly kind of deal. Well, Payson City only read it every 6 months.
It's okay, we just need to look at a year's worth of usage,
So
and
I sent you 2 years worth of
Okay.
use, so hopefully you can
that should be good.
build that dedication on.
That should be good.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Again, we'll
So-
get these over to you. Any other questions?
Yeah, we'll get your red lines, and as soon as you can get it back to us, we can get it back in here and get it finished up and get it on on an agenda when it's ready to come back to us.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
But we would be looking at that point in time, the new location, the proposed location for the water line, any easements that we would need, those types of things to be able to get that water line over here. Like I say, we own, the city owns a portion of that land there east of the currently improved Ginger Gold Road, but not all the way to 200 East. So that's something we would need to figure, and through 200 East to get to your property, just make sure we've got the right to get through there with that water line. Okay?
Okay, sounds good. With that, anything else? No, we'll move on to the next thing.
So can you make sure we have your phone number too, so we can have more contact with you than just email?
Yes,
Can you give that to us?
yep, it's 801-368-4131.
They're capturing it in the back, so that's good.
Yep.
Got it.
Did you get that, Camille? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. We'll
Okay.
get these
Thank you,
to
we'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is a proposed, or a traffic control request, located up here on, well, do we need to take a break? 5-minute break, or are you ready to just push on through? You guys good?
That's
Okay.
the last one, right?
Just want to
Yeah.
make, yeah, it's the last
Get it
one.
done.
I think you should read it.
You want to read them out loud? So the proposed traffic control at the intersection of 300 East and 400 South. This was a request that was received back in December, for basically requesting us to take a look at, stop signs or something at this intersection to help with the increased traffic that this road has been seeing because of the new connection, the new construction that's occurred there. So with that, police did put out the trailer there, that was, we were okay for a little while until it got buried in snow, and Public
I
Works
told
had to
you.
pull it out. You did tell me, you're right. So, it did get buried, but we did get roughly about a week's worth of data on there, and it was on there. So, I think I sent that all out to everyone so they could see that. I did not pull them up before. But, so with that, I'll work on pulling up those traffic numbers, but is there any thoughts, comments, on the proposed request? I'll kind of lean on.
What are they
police.
proposing? Stop going north-south?
Mm-hmm. On
Yes.
4th East or 3rd East.
So John, if we do approve the stop sign going north, we'd also put one on the other side, right? Of the intersection.
Yes, so
right
there'd
there.
be a southbound stop and a northbound stop.
Okay.
Or they say, we could look at that, or potential for one going east and west, but the request is to put one north and south.
So typically from an engineering aspect, we typically would put those stop signs on the minor roads.
Yeah.
Or the minor side of the intersection, as it were. In this case, did the trailer give us some indication of which one? Did we do one way or two way, or how did we do the trailer?
We just did the northbound.
Okay.
Obviously, nobody's living in this new
Right.
development, so the traffic counts were really low. But I don't think that, is very accurate at this point.
Right. It
You
doesn't
know,
give us a true representation of where we're headed.
Me and Jason were talking about this earlier, and I swear 20 years ago there was a stop sign there. Maybe not.
And there could have
Northbound?
been. There could have been. It's not yet.
On the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, but if I was looking at this development, say the entire city block as all new development, I would recommend a stop sign be put there.
North, south.
Yes.
Yeah.
We put one on the east side of it, of this new street, and so my opinion would be it needs one.
I agree. If this was, if we was looking at it as a whole new development, it would be on our plans as a stop sign. So I don't have any problem, putting one there.
I was
Even
gonna
though-
go look for a broken off one there, but it just it snowed and I couldn't see anything. So
Sorry, I'm trying to, I'll find that.
I don't think we need it, John.
No.
If you're looking for the traffic counts, I don't
It's
think
so
we need
small.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, it's
very
really
minimal on all of them.
I think the recommendation should be that we put a stop sign north and southbound there.
I'll second it. Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Sound like a motion? Got a second? Any other discussion? No?
Oh, I wasn't given an opportunity to comment.
You have an opportunity
I
to
know.
comment on the motion.
Motion's good.
You could- All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So Jason, work with you guys to get that set. Okay, and with that, the next item on the agenda is the minutes from December 13 DRC minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Randy. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. If there's not anything else, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we are adjourned at 12 o'clock p.m. Thanks, everyone. That was a...
I watched only 10 twice.